Shriye Namo Shriye Namo Tamashriye Namo Shriye Namo Shriye Namo Tamashriye Soha Om Namo Shriye Namo Shriye Namo Tamashriye Soha.
Go to me, go to me.
You ready to go live? No.
No. Can we do a sound test with you, Gala Rinpoche?
Hello, Venerable Geshe Yeshe.
Oh, yeah, not too late. Good morning, sir. And then,
야,
take it
지성.
away. Go it away.
거기도.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Delay. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for your translations. Welcome to people watching online. We'll begin with our prayers as usual, and the link for those prayers is in the chat box.
To the teacher and Tao, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, full destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha and Tao, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you are born on this earth, you pay 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme sun's face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the daughter that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame, a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash, a lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sense refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Ta dik song gen la.
뭐야? 어야, 다잖아. 대한 계세치 뭐 쉬어래 송래, 로. 시베 동에 자다 섬도 있어. 심제 메데 세버도 받아서. 대마 자다 쥐버도 배차. 자주 심제 따도 땅 메자스. 어시 송바타라. 시베 동에 자다 섬도 있어. 시바 코아게 동에 말리바 쉬어도 배. 기부 쟁게 갑시 람데 송겨라. 기분 쟁게 갑소 시바 코아냐와 이다 던도 미라라 소바 레다 녀모베와게 샹와도 전에 기치치에 그바텔레 에네 동에 탐제 바 쉬어도 봐서라 시베 동에 자다 섬되시 더다 기부 쟁게 람지를 메컵소 시바 코에 동에 타다 쉬어도니 대체도 에네 메다 동안 또 담에서 꼼 담바시 남샤트 요구하라 뒤송겨라 시베 동에 자다 섬되시 심지에 메데세완데 봐다 기부 첨부 값소 심지에 탐제에 동에 탐제 시외체도 산제지 고반 토반데를 어떻게요라 심지에 메데세완데 봐다마스 심지에 탐제기 메테오데 멘두바 라와 동해라서 봐 대창마 탐제 시월데베 심지에 탐제 동해다 제외체도 다 산제지 고반 토고도 삼상게 삼르티 기부 첨부 값 삼르티 고라 기부 첨부했던다 되더라. 심지어 메드스 안 되거든. 대만 자다 저번 되게 자스. 다 기부 총의 값이 있나다. 뭐 기분 중에 첨부 가득 값이 있나. 내가 그런가 코의 값들이야. 내 타르바다 탐색해 봐. 주위에 저도 건도 라다미 고반 상부지 껴와 상부치 주변 땐 상부치 톱고요라. 어디 송거라. 건도 라다 미 껴와라네 네 대화 망보 로와 껴와 망보 저번 되게 자서 대마 자다 저번 되게 자서 donda lada mi 껴와 상부치 톱데 뒤에도 먼저 라다 미 고바 주에다 타바다 탐색해 고바 주에치도 땡겨 버셔지 톱고요라 그래서 donda 기부 숨기 남기를 뭐 사상은 되던 상마데 장주가 심대라길에 계속나네 좁토를 송가라 대마 겨자 주번 되게 장주 심이 따도 땅매자 장주가 심랑 길에 깨버셔고래서 계심버되네 마땅와 땜버치제 송고래서 어디 송도 어야 되시려나
So, as the great master Shantideva has stated in his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, those who wish to crush the many sorrows of existence, who wish to quell the pain of living beings, who wish to have experience of a myriad joys, should never turn away from bodhicitta. So here, this verse, as it states in the first line, those who wish to crush the many sorrows of existence, this is really getting at the kind of attitude of a being of middling scope, recognizing all of the various sufferings within samsara. A being of this level sees that whoever one takes rebirth as, whether it is a human or a god, whether one is an animal, a hungry ghost, or a hell being, all of these are still in the nature of suffering. They come come to, as we see in the kind of stages of the path for the being of middling scope, see all of the cycle of samsara as suffering. And in order to get out of that, to crush the many sorrows of existence, they meditate on suffering and impermanence, selflessness, and so forth, in order to be able to extricate themselves. And then in the next line where it says, who wish to quell the pain of living beings, this is really talking about the being of great scope, the being who wishes to be able to alleviate the sufferings of all other sentient beings, their desired aim being Buddhahood, in order to be able to be of benefit to sentient beings, in order to get rid of the various kinds of sufferings and unwanted experiences that sentient beings have. So that second line really encompasses the kind of attitude of a being of great scope who is wishing to free other sentient beings, and in order to do so attain the state of Buddhahood. And then where it says, who wish to have experience of a myriad joys. This really encompasses the kind of attitude of the small scope in order to gain good states of existence within samsara, a rebirth as a human or a god, and good conditions within that. It is, as this last line says, should never turn away from bodhicitta. Generating this attitude of bodhicitta is the basis for achieving all of the desired aims for all three scopes. So we can see that someone who wishes to crush the many sorrows of existence, or to quell the pain of living beings, or to even have this experience of a myriad joys, to be able to gain a good rebirth in samsara, a special kind of a basis upon which you are able to continue to practice. Really, all of these kinds of desired aims come about as a result of our generating this attitude of bodhicitta. So here, we should make an effort, if we have not yet generated that, to generate it, to stabilize it, to increase and enhance that attitude.
Oh yeah. Oh, the tatunda kasura. Oh, the tanga jo namjune nambe chu ti shede sa ko kibu chungun jing chimbu sungbage samlo de chadar bi korto ba chego do. Ti jungun de cheshe chide tipe kibu chungun jing chimbu sung de suya transrista gyora. Oh, the kasura. Oh, tanda 심제 탐지에 때도 산제지 고반 토벌 샤냠도 심제 탐지에 때도 산제지 고반 토벌 샤님도네 디 기부 중고다 정다 첨부 참마가 남주도 되는데 참마데 두개를 남라 주고 요라 진보 수진 서발라 소바테서 주고 요래 어전에 다음에 봐다 동반이다 자주고 삼라 소바테서 콤발라 주고 요르티데 기부 순가게네 되는데 참마 탐지 냠솔라 고요라 기부 첨부가서 당부 기부 중원 냠솔라 되는 등 냠솔라 되네 첨부 주고라 마도고 ngamangamango 손에니 치마 기부 중을 남메기와 조바 교와주로 야 샴페인게 삼로다 샬레 처와 빵발서 같은 야게 도니 야야 공네 공도 페니 안 로고요 마도고 샤마데 샤샤 되게래요 말와 어디인데 다던다 너와 심지어 탐지에 때도 산제지 고반 토벌샤섬 심지어 탐지 동에다 토벌샤 통계게 그것에 연대 군대지 가사시된 요아샤섬 대체도 안에 대과시비 단다 공부로도 있어베라 테니 숑다 대솔리테네 대솔레테바다 사바 콤베름지 주바샤 냠도 콜로세탄데 세버쇼스
So, therefore, normally when we talk about like the Buddhist teachings, we need to really understand all three of these levels of practice, one could say, the small scope, the middling, and the great scope. And so at the point of really thinking about our motivation, we should reflect sort of in stages on these various kinds of motivations, recognizing that really as we progress, we need to engage in the practices of all of these, right? right? We need to engage in things like the 6 perfections, generosity and ethical conduct. We need to meditate on selflessness in order to be able to extricate ourselves from samsara. And we need to generate bodhicitta, that sort of attitude of wanting to become a Buddha for all sentient beings, as well as having the kind of grounding in ethical conduct, abandoning the 10 non-virtues and any harm to other sentient beings. And it's not as though we pass through these in a way where it's like, oh, I'm done with that practice and I go on to the next one, but rather it is the foundation that we increase and enhance over time. So something like the ethics of abandoning harming other sentient beings, we don't sort of surpass that practice, we enhance it and develop it further and further. So when we think about these 3 scopes, it's really not something where we pass through stages, but where we build upon it. And we should recognize the importance of holding all of those kinds of practices. So with that, as for setting our motivation, we should think that in order to become a being who has eliminated all faults and developed all good qualities, has complete knowledge of what it is that we should adopt and abandon, and is thereby able to fully benefit other sentient beings, I'm going to listen to these teachings on of the precious Garland of Nagarjuna and put them into practice in order that I myself might become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So please set such a motivation for listening to the teachings.
Oh yeah. Tanga du dele so. Ngele ki chunde sheba se tele so ngele. Ngele ki chunde sheba se tele atan de kam dil tanda ngele ki chunde sheba se de. Chitang ngele se de tarba da tamje chimba niga yongyo ba. Ngeba leba se menjuru su yita te wa se ko 대원들이 건 유언도에서 시리더라. 장 예바 레베 ngele시도 타르와 탐지 쳔바니가 시거도. 다단데 내leg 윤데 셰바서데 대과 신부 디데 시거도아. 가르스는 민주 장세 양답에 따와라 소바테스다. 말에 단디거리 지래. 내leg 윤데 셰바서데 장주그 셈. 라나메베 장주그 셈데 수께지기 규데 수 뒤운데서 아니고 교수부터다 네 상계의 최상부 성주장님 주지기 주다 배제다 대서 걸리시기도 소된 엘리트 상계의 고반 탐식의 주 걸리시기도 뒤나네다 당부도 가르치기도 쓰나 야 당부 걸려서 이래 준비 시작하라 라메 chanju tobe kyu so de sum de tene shegdo dire da tambude lana mebe chanju sanje ji koba tobe kyu so de sum na le su tene shegora sabje tambutere da tambu kan te karesna sholoka tenju tenshi dirwa dani dane jikden di lame chanju tom de na de sawa chanju sem roa kebu tar tendang 초대 도배 뉴지다 일라메데 이시라스 어다데 이거리 정도 아니오다 뒤주뒤 시다 내가 이거리 정도 어디 가르선도스 당이 다네스 되네 개부 전부 당이 다네스 당을 쓰와 직된 데스 아니 직된 베심제 셴남게 있어요 라남메베 산제지 고반데 톱되고 요나스고라 람미 자주 톱되나 대 줄라 매고레스 대 줄데 가레스 대 싸워 장주 셈데 지그레 장주 셈 대 싸워 장주 셈 로아게 부터텐데스 장주 셈데 템보 요아 매바 냠구 매바 동게 페리 로아게 부터 부 템보 제제 네바치 손투고 고레스 대절에 초대 독베 니지다세 초다 타 남게 태 캡에 셈제 탐제 동해대 전도지 닝지 전부 깨고래서 초대 도배 닝지다스 너 초매보다 탐매배 심재요라 남게 거쳐비 심재와 대조야 배 닝지 깨고래서 동해대 전도 대조 상마 동해대 전도 초월에 매봐 심재인데다디 동해대 최고는 데다디 단당하라졸에 동해대 마테네디 콜네바 연구 삼사삼료라 대조 강가 매봐 차네 남게 태도고 심제 야 심제 임버 삼제 진짜더니 동해 전기 심제 임버 삼제 대탐제 개발매바 동해대 전지 진지 초대 도배 인지다서 인지 첨부터 준 거라. 니라 메데 이실라스데 니라 메데서 타니라 메데바 체달을 체베 탈을 놓네 동반이레스를 좀 되다 가야 매바 텐데 멤버십 동반이레스도 좀 되다 코아다 가가 매바잖아 내 체베 탈을 놓고라 타텔을 벌어져 그래서 단단 아주 삼륜날이야 랑원에 두바 랑와도 두바도 나다 소소다 셴스도 랑와도 십시 삼을 거고라 어제전에 딱달로 놓더라 랑와에 따여봐 따에 딱달로 놓더라 타니라 메타에 시스데 동반이 또ပဲ된다 땡진 제벌 중앙에 동바 랑원에 동바에 땡진 제벌 중앙에 자지 태바 어디 고요라 타니스 멜로아세데 라와도 트베 동바 라와도 트베 동바 예나야 땡진 제벌 중앙 좀더 고대 자지 태바세 어디니도 용거라 기억되니 타니라 메데 베시고라 동바이 오니라 메데 시라스 대솜데 산제지 고바 톱되고요나 대 규조 대솜들이 안에 되다도 레벌라 kurees tisekdo ya otislana.
So then here, picking up where we had left off in the text, we're going to be picking up from the second half of verse 74, which begins this topic of explaining this sort of three principal causes. Well, actually, this is an explanation of the cause and effect of definite goodness. So when we talk about definite goodness, that is referring to something unchanging, right? So this is the state of liberation and omniscience. We talk about sort of higher status and definite goodness. And here, primarily because this is a Mahayana text, when we speak about definite goodness, we're talking about Buddhahood. And the three principal causes of Buddhahood are then going to be explained first, and then it will get into how one trains in the causes for accomplishing the various marks and signs of a Buddha. So beginning with then the sort of exhortation to train in the main causes of definite goodness, that is Buddhahood, they are summarized into these three main causes. So here, as begins in the second half of verse and I should say 174, if you and the world wish to attain unexcelled awakening, its roots are bodhicitta that is as firm as the king of mountains, compassion that is as vast as space, and wisdom that relies not on duality. So here, if you, referring to the king, and the world, as in those sentient beings who are abiding within samsara, abiding within this world, if you wish to attain unsurpassed awakening, if you want to have the kind of highest happiness, then the roots of that, as in the causes of that, are first bodhicitta. So bodhicitta that is stable, that is non-degrading or degenerating in any way. So this then is referred to as bodhicitta as firm as the king of mountains or Mount Meru. And the cause that leads to having that kind of bodhicitta or wishing to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings is really great compassion, as comes in the next line where it says compassion that is as vast as space. So sentient beings are as vast as space, are sort of incalculable. We can't really reach a limit to that. And so too, one's compassion should extend to all sentient beings in an impartial kind of a way. Currently, we tend to have compassion for some that are close to us, and others, if they're, say, getting hurt, we're kind of like, nah, that's okay. It's not a kind of impartial compassion that spreads to or extends to all sentient beings. So one needs to have this kind of compassion that is as vast as space, or great compassion. And in addition to that, as it reads in the last line, and wisdom that relies not on duality, or wisdom that doesn't fall into either of the extremes. So not falling into a kind of extreme of nihilism, wherein one thinks that, well, if there's no independent autonomous existence, then there's no karma, there's no cause and effect. And so having that kind of extreme of annihilation that denies the existence of cause and effect is one extreme, and not falling into holding on to the way that phenomena ourselves and others appear to us to have this kind of independent, autonomous existence. If we hold on to that, it becomes a kind of extreme of permanence. So within that emptiness, within there being a lack of any kind of independent, autonomous existence, one should still accept the proper functioning of karma, cause, and effect. So while being empty of such sort of reified, independent, autonomous existence, there being the possibility, the sort of logical functioning of karma, cause, and effect, then, is what is indicated by this wisdom that relies not on duality or doesn't fall into any extremes.
Oh yeah. Oh, tadi tadi kire. Oh yeah, tiendu tatanda delia. Oh, kasure. Kunzu chanju gi sem de sungudwa. Chidang hanjo tondam chanju gi sem da kunzu chanju gi sem shera. Tondam chanju gi sem se de tongbani ngusum tu tokbe lam del sigara. Oh, kunzu chanju gi sem se de semje tamje gi tondu sanje ji koba tobar cha nyambe. Chanju gi sem de la kunzu chanju gi sem sigara. Tela kunzu chanju gi sem segwa karesna. Kunzu ji ku sugu tobala. Kyo ku se yende kunde ya tumi malu wa pangbe kansa chilin jurwa cha asam. Kansa chilin jursuna ne shenla ngo su che sungye la soba tinde warwa. Cheza zo topja de simje tamje gendo sanje ji koban tobar cha ase chanju semba ge topja zo de sugu la megi wara. Chugu da sugu nyegi dane. Chugu de ko pangdo yende tarchimba shigyura. Pangdo yende tarchimba kansa chilin jurwa cha asam ge wara. Pangdo yende tarchimba kansa chilin jursuna tuja shendalya ngosu namba teni che sheya da shenje teni tuwe de kanga tuwe yorwa kansa de. Pangdo yende nibude ko rangi tarchimba rangi tunda rangdenji kusigdo atila. Rangi ikya kuse yende kunden juye chatila pangdo yende nidi yungora. Shenla pen toya shende pesum soba tuwe tilo sugu te yungora. O te yende zo sugu la mek yora. Sa kunzu chanju ki semsede kunzu be ku sugu la zo meni yungora te sunshana. Tandam chanju sem tandam ba tongba nyungu sumdu tobe chane. Tele chanju semsi meng dagdwa. O te che. Te yende ta kunzu chanju ki semde kam de kapsun dreba nal ma she mada shung ku ngo sute ke tingu me dwa. O te yene chanju ki semde kenshi, kyushi, kenshi, topshi le tene kewa re se chi shekdwa. O te ta de pa dinal sebu yo ma re te dreba kapsun gudwa. O kyushi se. Kunzu chanju ki semde kenshi le tene kegres. Kenshi da kyushi topshi. Kenshi de karga re se na. No kenshi de yode ne kase. Chansem ge tu sam ge me kya batonga. Chanju semba chanju sem ke sona ne chanju semba to ne tu de pe ke wa sonam de shi so ye ga sa bala tu ne sam ge me kya ba yonde sam ge me kya ba ye ba tone de ke ge sem ke ge wa chi de. Chansem ge de do chansem ge tu sam ge me kya ba to ke ge wa chi che. Ya chi de ga su se chansim ge tene ma do to ba chanju sembe tene to lo samlo ta so samlo ta ne ane chanju sem ke yongora tezu zo che che chamsen ge tene ma do to be ke ge wa che ten tejin ge damba ma be to lia semje tamje ge tene se shende to be de pe ka bo de sam ning me de de mi ka ga so to da ma to she samye se de tende samlo semje tamje de shida ke je she na ta se yongju menge ke she ge samsa tende ge kyang de ma to yo ma ra o ta ni me de de da bo lia semje tamje ge tende chanju sem ke ba de pe kombo re sam tas chaba chimbu tamba manu je ke chi do ngaran ke go sa uzu che che ki go ro ti ken ki ba de so ra ti je ge tamba nyamba ma so ba ro wa nyamba ma so be ke ji to ba che mene ka re ane ni me de sem ke ba kom ba to ke ki ke ba che o je de so o te le ke she le te ne ke wa chi she do o di ji lam no
Can Shiba di karre gen konda.
tumbe de ma so ya teaching temba nyamba maso ba de chere so.
Oh.
Oh, tene teaching temba nyamba maso le ke ba chiche. Ene chide dira kasa. Oh, nime de sem ke ba komba to ke ba.
No, no.
Nime de sem ke ba de kombo de samche. 다른 배 우주 겹쳐 치위사 당님만 얘네 뒤 상부 걸을 때게 다 등산 미가가 지속 거라다네 챵베 상부세를 또도 용야 매브리레삼 다 다른 게는 선을 납치 버사그레삼 tindeken지 게 바신고도 그래서
Yeah, decent.
어야 되죠.
So here, then just to expand on this a little bit, when we talk about bodhicitta, and here particularly in the commentary by Gyaltsabje, it refers to this attitude of bodhicitta as being conventional bodhicitta. So here, when we talk about bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta is that kind of attitude, that thought of, for the sake of all sentient beings, I myself wish to become a perfectly enlightened Buddha. And really, the kind of, and then as opposed to that, ultimate bodhicitta is referring to that wisdom directly realizing emptiness held by such an intention. And so when we think about conventional bodhicitta, really this has as its objective, we could say, the form body of a Buddha, right? If one wants to become a Buddha in order to benefit other sentient beings, it is not on the basis of one's own abandonments and realizations that one can do that. The Dharmakaya is really useless, not useless, but incapable of directly benefiting other sentient beings. And so to be able to do so, one needs to become a person, a being who is able to teach and interact with other sentient beings. So when it comes to this kind of conventional bodhicitta, the primary objective that one is striving for is not solely one's own perfect abandonments and realizations, but really the kind of person, that body, that form body that one will take on in order to be able to benefit other sentient beings. So that's really called the body of others' aims, whereas one's own perfect abandonments and perfect realizations are the body of one's own aims. And that, of course, is interconnected with being able to take on a form that can work for others. So conventional bodhicitta primarily sort of observes or is striving for that rupakaya, that form body. And here in the commentary as well, it refers to this attitude of conventional bodhicitta wishing to become or wishing to obtain unsurpassed enlightenment that is like Mount Meru, is sort of stable like the king of mountains, that is accomplished through 4 conditions, 4 causes, and 4 powers. So here, this isn't in the root text, but in the commentary, and looking then first at these 4 conditions. The first of these conditions is really observing this kind of inconceivable motivation of other sentient beings, like looking at the kind of attitude that they have and thinking that really that sort of mind is something almost beyond conception. We're inspired by that. Seeing those other beings who have that, this is a condition for us ourselves, giving rise to an attitude of bodhicitta. And then second is by much hearing about this. By hearing about this kind of attitude repeatedly, we ourselves are able to generate that. And then I had to ask for clarification because these last 2 points, the third is the condition that of being unable to bear the kind of decline of the Mahayana. And this is then related with the 4th condition, that is in this degenerate era, recognizing how extremely rare it is to have such an attitude of wishing to benefit others. So we can see like the Mahayana is in decline, and being unable to bear that, we want to generate such an attitude of bodhicitta for ourselves. And so too, looking around at us, we can see in society and in general, just having an attitude that cares for others, that is concerned with others, is something quite rare. And recognizing that as well, this is a sort of condition for our generating bodhicitta.
Oh yeah, that 가서래. 그러니까 교시대로와 교시에서 견시대로서 교시세더라. 대 티진도 리세베 교시도 택바 준비 리세 지당 가줄이야 박사님들 상매시게 사변시대 요하라. 대야야 걔네 지 택바 준비 samlu ya koya ki rigdi ya seche ya nipa chirruwa chora. Tijindu ri sebe kyu sigara. Ni nyingji chimbe simbe kyu si. Tani nyingji chimbo rangyu le kene. Ke sona ane ti janju simke kyu le keba chandu gara. Nyingji chimbe simbe kyu si. Shenji kaje la sebe kyu si. Shenji chanju samba shenda ki simbe ki tondo kawa chaya la soba. Pena sanje chumde de dabu ngunju loba lamji negapsu. Chanju samba kewa toni mabu yora kule kyamba. Shenji kaje te zulia sube. Tina shingaya che gure samsa. Shenji kaje la sube kyu si che ra. Shenji kaje la sube kyu che. Shi zang zuan. Tijindu ri sebe kyu che. Kiwe shenji ji simbe kyu. Kiwe shenji ji chu teni ma mabu shene ni soso yen yen tindil teni kiwa sa. Nyingji chenpo rangyu le kene kiya chora. Nyingji chenpo simbe kyu che. Shenji kaje la sube kyu si che. Ti kyu shi se di ji shikdwa. Ya.
So then next are the four causes. So we just went through the four conditions for generating bodhicitta. And then in terms of the four causes, the first of these is awakening this kind of Buddha nature, right? So we all have this potential, this seed within us, but when it meets with certain kind of conditions, that is sort of awakened or fostered, nurtured into our training along the bodhisattva path. So the first sort of cause is the awakening of that lineage or that Buddha nature. And then second, I'm going to put this in the order that I think it goes in, is hearing about bodhicitta and these trainings from a virtuous spiritual friend. When we have the cause of that kind of virtuous spiritual friend, we are inspired. I mean, this is something that from hearing from them, these teachings, this is how we then develop that within ourselves. And the third cause is then being held with great compassion. When our mind is sort of infused with that attitude of great compassion, that becomes a cause for generating bodhicitta. And then there is, and I'm not sure if the exact words that it is, but sort of seeing the austerities or the difficulties that others have engaged in. For example, the Buddha in the path of training, the difficulties, the sort of trainings that he underwent in order to become a perfectly enlightened Buddha. We become sort of inspired by those. Seeing the practices of others then becomes a cause for us ourselves generating bodhicitta. So those are the four causes.
야, 다들 또 실력이었어요, 또. 또 실력이었어요. 어디 가서는 랑게 톱스기도 당부들이야. 랑게 톱스 소소 랑이지. 셴 동에 와서 와텐데 통망부 통삼을 통텐데 께 많이 뭐또 소소 그쪽 갈래 겹져 꼼 겹져 티셔야 될 수기도. 랑게 톱스래 겨와시라. 셴지 톱스 셴 동에 와서 와텐데 망부 통외 께 전에 ane kiawa tili shenji topsikido. Ane kare rangi topche, ane shenji topche, ane gombe topsi chisira. Gombe topsi kiawa nga ma tindeli ane chiki susu mabu gomche, ane tindeli namsa kesho cho chayde tindeli kenchi janju sem kiawa tisikora. Ane gombe topse, ane chore topsikida. Chore topside tekpa chimbe kiwe shengi tendeke chwe teni bel dawari si she tende chene uzu chene ene te kengi tsoho che kiwa tela shengi topsi kiwa asikidowa. Ode topsi le tene. Tende deso asa topsi.
Rangi top, shengi top, gombe top,
Chore top.
jorwe top.
Chore topside kiwe shengi chwe tenbala tene mambu shene ene ten yenbala tene kiwa asikidowa. Odende kyoshe kenshe topshi kombala tene chanju chodo semde kene sem tembu ke gure sigora. Ya ta tesa maimba namju kanju chene kyunde menga tunji kone sem kewa takshen nyamju kone sem kewa soba yongora. Ta ina di ken yang dende keke kenji ko samrutane ke yongora kenji sora cheche. O te chene chanju ko semde manyamba rawa kebu tar temba kwa reese. Kyoshe kenshe topshi le tene kewa ta. kunzu kasa kyunde menga tunji kone kyo. Paba tome ne chizun chambala kyube loge kyunde menga tunji kone sem keba sungudwa. Chizun jambe yane ane gombo ludu la soba tene ma kyube lugi gombo ludu ta ane kese shimbu shiwa la sola kyube ludu ya takshen nyamje kone sem kechu sikdwa ta tingsa chene ko kadam bela masune tingi nyega sungdu dre kone ane sem kegyawara ya o te shena ya.
So then the next is the four powers. So here, these are listed then as sort of one's own power through one's own mental fortitude, having this kind of observation of the sufferings of others and really taking that initiative upon oneself. That is generating bodhicitta through one's own power. And I should just say that these have some kind of overlap. There is also then through the power of others. This is really based upon seeing the sufferings of others and really wanting to be able to alleviate that for them, and also seeing the example of other bodhisattvas doing this kind of practice. So due to the power of others, observing that, then generating this for oneself. Then there is the power of habituation, due to having laid in imprints in previous lives, having some kind of habits or a customization to this attitude, one is more easily able to generate such an attitude again in the future. So that is the power of habituation, one could say. And then there is the power, I'm going to translate this, the power of application. That might not be exactly right, but it's really when one has the kind of interactions with a virtuous spiritual friend, it is in dependence upon hearing these teachings from them that you then apply yourself to that, right? So the power of that kind of interaction with a virtuous spiritual friend that acts as something for motivating you, or as a condition, and I should be careful with the language, but as a power for then generating this attitude of bodhicitta, is the kind of power of application. So as it says here, in dependence upon those four conditions, four causes and four powers, one should develop this kind of bodhicitta that is stable, like the king of mountains. And here, when we normally talk about generating bodhicitta, we talk about the instructions like the sixfold cause and effect method, or equalizing and exchanging self and others. These four conditions, causes, and powers are really in addition to that. They are the sort of external like conditions or causes that help, but in terms of actually generating such an attitude of bodhicitta, we do so on the basis of the instructions like the sixfold cause and effect method that was taught by Maitreya and passed down to Asangas and so forth. And then, or alternatively, based upon the equalizing and exchanging of self and others that comes from Manjushri to Nagarjuna down to Shantideva and continuing on down. And then we see with the Kadampa lamas, they really kind of combined these two methods in order to develop a way of generating bodhicitta.
Oh yeah, that in there kone ene chanju ge sem de ri ombo ri na shi tembo juro meba nyamgu meba o tende ke ba che ko re se songu do che se ra ene te na ne ju zo de ga re ngore se na ning ji chen bu de ngore chou de to be ning ji da se de ra ju zo de sim je dong da tren de je zawa de ka je shuk che wa yo na ya e te sam je dong da tre wa chi ne chi che gu do sam chen de pa me chen be chen de nyen de ge chen be o tende samurta ane pa gya gya ne simje thamje padam mada se tende samurta gyora o ti che ane ya ta da she ran dewan dole tunge medo ba shindo she dewan dole tunge medo ba nya bare so so che bu ge dewa truve ta kange se te kyang kyang samurta te de ran che ban de shuk che ta de ti kyo kang ga de yong gyo de se ta she zo she be ne yonde changmo de te yong gu sam 다 겨와 토마메는 삼루타에 노르샤 삼네 딱신 체 삼루세데 요거도 텐데 삼루타네 닝지 전부데 빼 개치슈치 규조데 테레세르시도 초대 두베 닝지 다스라 닝니라 메데 시라세 타니라 메템바 동반이 검소나 네 잠바다 닝지데 뜻을 깨들레 팽게와라 슈처로가라 심지어 상마대 가오 냠도 가라와 진진 아니 가에서 아니 딱초 딱신 초 제네 코아코 Mikivele Mambusa Dedigora. Tongbanya to son the Tende Namjuna Shibuji Koyu, some Tende, now Koran Medu, Rawa Tendation Medu, the Simja Kangati, now Rawashi Man, Rawashi, Zine, Koa Kone, Chakdan Givangile, Mandra Sacha, Koa Kota Gisamsa, Tendation, the Kuniji, Shabukia to the Lela Yura, Hazu Umaju Wangote Gura. Oh, Karshire. God do that. More, I do it. So they to be ninja dance, or take a bushra some of and then you let me shila set it. Don't want you to be ishite, Sanjay Kobato, the stories. Take what saw Koran Duda, Yomo Zawa, Singa, Chagdan Jesak Shikora, Zawa de Leno, do the only Chagdan never do it, and Shella Chambatsewa gets to Lela Yara, lecture Yara. Oh, that is good so somebody level Chaco, there is some good one. Yeah, this is Lamna individual.
So here, as it says, as Nagarjuna is advising the king, one needs to develop this kind of bodhicitta that is as firm as the king of mountains. And the major cause, so this kind of attitude of bodhicitta should be something that isn't going to degenerate in any way. It's stable, it's firm. And the primary cause of such bodhicitta is this attitude of great compassion. For example, in the sixfold cause and effect method, we begin by thinking about the beings in this life who have shown us great kindness. We naturally sort of feel affection for, whose suffering we want to alleviate, and so forth. And then, based upon contemplating the countless rebirths that we have taken, we extend that farther and farther. We recognize that every single being has acted in such a capacity towards us, has shown us such great kindness. And it really is on the basis of developing a kind of compassion that encompasses all of those beings that we then generate this attitude of bodhicitta. And so too, in the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others, we begin by contemplating the fact that every other single being is the exact same as we are in wanting to have happiness and not wanting to suffer. And really, when we come to that kind of understanding, coupled with a recognition that our self-cherishing attitude is really the source of all of our problems, all of the faults that we have encountered up until now have been caused by our self-cherishing attitude. And an attitude that cherishes others is really the source of all things that are good. And so it is in this way that through these methods, through developing great compassion, and great compassion then as a foundation for developing bodhicitta, this is how we go about developing such a stable kind of bodhicitta. And so too, this non-dual wisdom, or wisdom that relies not on duality, this is, again, a cause of Buddhahood, but also one of the causes that enhances our bodhicitta. When we think about the kind of way in which we grasp at an I, and then we have the sense of I and other, and due to that, we then engage in all kinds of activities, accumulating negative karmas that are going to create our suffering and so forth. It is a recognition of emptiness as being the method for severing that root of samsara. It gets at the root. It's what will get us out of this cycle of suffering. And so, like we see at the beginning of Chandrakirti's entry to the middle way, where he describes the kind of process that we and other sentient beings are undergoing by first grasping to an I and so forth. This kind of wisdom, realizing emptiness or understanding emptiness, also enhances or develops our bodhicitta. It is something that the understanding of which contributes to that attitude of bodhicitta.
Oh, yeah. Tan de Zuko de so Jebanal Rida, Tanda de Kesabshaken Jebanal Sugua, and the Kasona. So the Kabashers, Oma Jubeka Sungin, Chambada, Yujuda, Chanju Sim Kijuda, Tongbanyela Sobatiko, the Oma Jubeka Sukeber Sungi or the Esse, Tezutaku de Esse, and the Tinema Chicha Keber Chenduna, Cherumuchin Labri Chemikasu, Chivachilla Laba Sero, and it is Kibuchembe Lamla Laba, so what is the Abutana, Tezuna Pesebu or Esondova, or Tichi Lamna and the Kide, yeah.
So here from the commentary, it talks about how one can look at texts like, for example, Chandrakirti's entry to the middle way in terms of the ways in which one generates bodhicitta. As well, one can look at for example, the stages of the path literature, and these act as ways for someone to be able to develop and generate these kinds of attitudes. As far as the methods of practice, those are the sorts of texts that one should pay attention to.
Oh yeah, talking this matter. Oh yeah. Oh, that means you chance young da be tawa to tambo gara zo lo chang ane cholam je kap se tinji su ji to. Atene yang ne yang do kom ne sa tambo tu do za tambo ni ngo sum do to ba la so ba. Oh, tende che kon ne kon pe ora. Oh, tende kom be ru ba pa che ma lo chang ko yo na. En de che ru bu che je be. La ri che mo. Ke se ge che ba chi la la ba se ro ro. Ene parji thama ni la ba se chi ne da la dong. Tezu ko la lap chu le so ba tezu ya bu. Tana tezu na le se bu che kurim shin do kum ju ka ga yo de so do wa. O te chi la.
So here, then one begins by generating this sort of attitude of bodhicitta, great compassion, and an understanding of emptiness that is conceptual, or that goes through a sort of a generic image, is mediated by that. It isn't a kind of direct realization. And this is what we experience then on the path of accumulation. And by slowly improving, developing those kinds of attitudes, particularly that wisdom realizing emptiness, when we get to then the path of seeing, we have a direct realization of emptiness and continue to develop this further and further. So as far as the kind of stages of practice, talking about how one goes about developing this attitude, developing the various practices that go along with that, as well as a particular kind of explication of the training in the final two perfections, one should know this from the various stages of the path literature and so forth.
Oh yeah, this one.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Ah, tene ka do se she ba. Oh, tanga jo sabje ni ba de le to. Tanda te e ka so da. Ni le ge chunde le la ba se te she ra la na me be. Sanje ko ba to je kyu so sum du tu ne te la ku re sum de she sa re ba. Ah, ta tene sanje je chen sum ju sanje tu be kyu la ba se. Sanje ke tene chen sam bu sum ju sanje da pe je sam bu kya ju se te yo ra ku yon de. Ku yon de je ba la so ba te zu kang ga ya ti chi wa ra. Oh, sanje je ne chen sum ju sanje le so ba de ju kyu te kyu de le lam ne je bu de ju gu de se ti she ga ra ti she ga ni ba te da. Ni ba aya. Wa chi le so ga zo. Din do sa re she. Oh yeah. Oh, ta de ra ni ba la ni se. Ni ba nyambar ko ta ke bu ya bu je san sho san ye ke yön de ku yön de chen sam bu sum ju san ye le so ba te zo chun de le te ne tu ku ya re se te nyambar ko ta she ngo te ba ta nyambar ko te da sho lo ka tin ju de ba ke bu chen bu ke chen ke se do ke bu chen bu se ke bu chen bu san ye chum den de ki ku yön de chen sam bu sum ju san ye ke se ora Kevo Chimbo Keshin Ki, Sani Sumju Sani Ki, San Sambu Sumju Sani, Kun Zebar Chebe, Tsuto Dan Zebu Dan, Dan Man Pancha Yungura, Kui Yon Dentazu, Chundin Rendin Tane Kui Yon Dentazu Yungura, Shegura. Sumju Sani Ki, Chidar, Chuku Chanjur Vasa, San Sambu Sumju Sani Ki, Sanye Namji, Ene Ku. Chamber Jurvase, Teta Bone Sembarote, Kande Sene, Chamberati, Sember Jose, Nyamberkuta, Yavuja Sensuase, Nyamberkuate. Yeah, what is Lana?
So Then we turn next to the second of these two topics. So after saying that one should train in the three primary causes leading to Buddhahood, we then turn to training in the causes that accomplish the various signs, the 32 signs of a Buddha's body. So these are really the kind of, they're the 32 signs and the 80 marks that beautify or indicate the kind of qualities of a Buddha. And so here, this is then divided into two different topics. The first of which is an exhortation to listen, telling the king, please listen well, and then the actual explanation of these. So again, these are marks or signs on the body, such as the crown protrusion and so forth, that are sort of these beautiful adornments, attributes of a body, and here of a Buddha's body. And here we are going to get into training in the individual causes that lead to each of those. So beginning then in verse 176 here, which is the exhortation to listen, he says, King, listen now to the way that your body will be adorned with the 32 distinct signs that indicate a great being.
Yeah, this one.
Yes.
Somebody just did this one. Oh, yeah. Nibanese, Kudungi Yingbuchen. Oh, but it remember. Kudungi Yingbuchen, the Sanje Yeshe Labata, Kabu Chunam, Sagbata, Tipe, Lena Pambish, Sanje Chumdente, Tinila, Chudensi, all did it. That's Sanje Chumdente, the Kui Yonde, Roba Sungu Yonde, Tugi Yonde Mambuyora, or Danda de San Sambusla Sobatu Chua de Carisana, Nibani, Kudungi Yingbu. 见到三界兄弟的就贵人谁也别认不见，确定了说我到这里啊，是要得做，搞什么啥个事的是，三界的经济拉不到，搞不去那么，搞不去那么也讲的别的，特别去那么帮呀的，我真这些都，那三界兄弟的古当送的土了，说我这做带不起呢，那说那么不啥个的，特别么不大个的是。 Sanje chumde de tinila, chube ten she ya, number chudo, Sanje ki kusuda chude da sun la soba tezulia, Sanje chumde de nila, chube ten she, kusun kube kone, sunum sasa, chuba pisage, sunum sasa ten ese, o te juana shi, and this Sanje chumde de tezuta, Sanje, okay. 对对对对的的，说了对对对的，确定确家是三界中间的，确别定的是确别的家啊，拍巴当，那天热那么了，我当天嘛确别去呢，那是那么来上步，确别来上步，真的啥呢？那前天的穷人他妈写给我的，哦，对对对对的到过的，说了个。 최대시 최자 박바당하세 개발도 박바다 라 최베테레 최버자와레 최베 이 개발도 박바레스 개럽 남네 레코르웨세 아니 메켐바 라 이거 토졸이야 구셉시발에 소바틴델 때네 다던다 산제제 최베테 구순토기 라 소바테졸레 최바시야다라 최자 네 개발도 파고다. 최저 개발도 파고돼서 그래서 네 미개름 나래. 가지고 다 개발이야. 소소 파말에서 뭐 개걸이야. 구십시에 저라. 개름 남네 레꾸르에서 겨와 망볼이야. 좋아. 네 뭔지 상계 남게 최베 땡토솔이야 최바타. 네 개름라서 뭐 어때솔이야. 인구를 샵도 쉬에. 근데 망보께서 망보 삼님이 잡아 사발을 때네. 네 반대 처샵 콜로에 쳔베 콜로 주라 주르세 차다 샵데 좋아 반대 처샵 콜로에 네 쳔베 콜로 주라 주세 차다 샵라 콜로 좀 용거라 처샵 콜로 쳔다스 근데 문도 제네 자와에네 진짜 내라고요라 처샵 콜로 쳔다 리베 샤우세라 방아제 마요라 Chada Shapsuru Drave Dewa Dance, Mondo Jacob Java Bigadona, and it is somewhat Zakorana Sebsiora. That on that Tambu the Shagdwa, Chada Shap Kolu, Sema, Tatsema Kambas, or Titis, Tikarchen Yungursina, Joa Mambola Munji Sanjagi, Kusun to Della Soba Tizolo Chevada, Kerala Chevala Soba, and the Mambo Chene, Masabalatene, Nichata Shap the Colossetti Gores, what I teach you, Lamna, do you?
So here then, beginning in verse 77 or 177 here, this gets into the explanation of the individual kinds of signs and the causes that lead to them, and then the sort of what is the relationship between them. And so here, as a kind of precursor to this verse, it says then in the commentary that by doing these kinds of actions, now here normally in Tibetan we refer to something as like a churten, which is the sort of basis of making offerings, and this really is referring to the actions of making respectful offerings, respectfully with one's body, speech, and mind toward those who are worthy of honor, whether it is the sort of the Buddha's body itself, those who have its blessings and whatever it might be that is a basis that is worthy of honor because of their qualities. If one makes offerings respectfully with body, speech, and mind, as well as by offering to those who are, say, elderly or worthy of respect in some ways. So here I'll read the verse that goes with this. Due to honoring chaityas, that's the Sanskrit word. For the Tibetan, we have the churten, which is really the basis of making an offering. So something that is a representation of the qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And if we are making respectful offerings to that, or to those who are worthy, to Aryas and also elders, your glorious hands and feet will be wheel marked, showing that you shall turn the wheel. So here, if you have faith in the qualities of those kinds of beings, or if one honors a stupa, for example, that is a representation of the Buddha's mind, gives offerings and reverence and honor to those who are worthy, also to those who are older, like one's parents and so forth, the kind of result that comes from that is having your glorious hands and feet will be wheel marked, and that actually... showing that you will turn the wheel. And so here we have then in this next section a kind of description of the various signs of on a Buddha's body and what the causes are that lead to them. If we want to see this more clearly, this also occurs in the 8th chapter of the Ornament for Clear Realizations, where it's all sort of laid out very directly.
Oh, that Chashab Kolu Chaba said to the door, Chada Shablo Kolurimo, Sebuchi to David. Then the dinner demand the Bakurama, Loshane Duta. Sanje Loa, Sanje da, Sanje Muta, and it is Chudenda, Shaya Chuja, Pamata, Sosa Pamata, Kemboda, Lovenda, and then Nebala Soba Tezulia, Nevada, Pugbeck and Dula Soba, Kerab Solia, and Ningur Shabdo. Tangazo Pazo Legacy, Kambando, Lagbata, Kamba Legacy, Robert Chekuyora, Tinde Mambo Sabalten, and it child I shoved the color Sembala Soba, Sanche, Tinde Yogura said, oh, Kerem Namla Kurwata, Shenji, Sigi Nembe Sigi, Beda, Shenji Sigi Meneba, Shenji Patu, Sigi Meneba, Tamjele Pa Kawad, Tinde, Color Sembala Soba, Tinde Yunde. Kusun Zebo, Roa, or Tende your editor. Siji Bedan Demba, Chashab Yeti, and Sipton, Mochuso be Color, Taji, Sembe Color George. Tende that Chashab Color Samba, say, Tambut, yeah, Tende one, or the Robs Labnella, yeah.
No. So then, in the commentary to this, it says that if one respectfully sort of honors well actual Buddhas or those like representations of Buddhas, as well as those that are worthy of honor, one's parents, one's sort of preceptors and teachers, those who are sick and so forth. Additionally, the kind of Arya Sangha, those who are elderly, then one will have these kinds of sort of magnificent wheels on the hands and feet. So when we think about, when we go about serving others, we use our sort of hands and feet. And if we have done this over a long period of time, the kind of result that comes in the form of a Buddha's body is for the hands and feet to be wheel marked. So that's what this then gets at in 177.
Oh, yeah. Don't I just show look don't you get it? Don't you get it? Oh, Gabu, Chula, Dagbarni, Yanda Lamba temperatures. That Dandongo says the Gabu, Sonda Gabulia, Gabu, Sene, Ranga Chu, Turbata Sambache, the Lang the tempo judge I get drag, Tashi's set, etc. Gabu Chula, Dagbarni, Yanda Lamba temperatures. Menyambachi tembuche konde konde sonkures. Tene shindo shabnebe, chanju semba churba laase. O te mambu, keba mambu tende sabala tene se debu judiciaire o tangma. Tene shindo shabnebe, chanju semba churba laase. Shabde tido de ngandu rene kongo de chiora. Te o de kongo de chitua, tende mebe kadu kora, shikwa chipa yusera, shab chanyamba. 야, 오 공고로 된대 매버지. 찬야바 어 된대 줘래서. 나 개부 köke 추 딱벌 켈랑번에시 안다 발랑부터 마냠시 템바 저세. 아니 된대 겨 망부 사발레 때네 가리용 그래서네. 강딜 냠버. 샤귀 티디 냠바. 그거 안전에 어디 동벌을 공고를 지어라. 된대 매버 냠바. 샤귀 티디 샤테 바 냠바. 어 뒤에 강딜 Nyambar Babe Shindu Shabnebe Chanju Simber Churwa Lagwe Tenda Labur Shawas. Oh, Tirita, Kichi Lapshana, this one.
Yeah.
Shamyam dancer to da. Oh, gosh. Chashab Kolu said the Rebesha. Tayish, oh, yeah.
Yes.
This one.
Decent.
Oh, yeah, this is a Sholoka Tinjutin Tingutere.
Tungierwa.
Oh, Tingeche.
So then next in verse 178, it says, King, always be steadfast in your commitments concerning the Dharma. In that way, you shall become a bodhisattva who has level and even feet. So here he's exhorting the king that always, whatever kinds of commitments you have made regarding the Dharma, hold those firmly. Don't allow those to degenerate in any way. And if one is to, over a long period of time, hold such firm commitments, the result of that is to have level and even feet. So when we look at our feet, we can see that we have an arch that kind of comes up. There is this hollow part of our feet. But due to the kind of steadfast nature of a Buddha, particularly in his commitments related to the Dharma and not allowing those to degenerate in any way, the result that comes from that is having these kinds of feet where there isn't that hollow sort of space, but rather the feet are level and even.
This one.
Decent.
Oh, yeah, that's all got Tinju Tengudimba. What the Carson Dosana. Chinda, Nyembe, Chida Nese. And the two over she says, Shiva. Koa Chimbas and Nabu. Me, Jobuda, Kangi, ever seen a condo of what you had in the Shagura. A Koa Chimbas. And then Nyembe Chida and Nyambarma, Chugitam, Nyambo Koran, Nawadrea, oh, the Mexique at Antidelia, Yawicha, oh, the Abudu, some that Tam. Shake tam Nyambarma Ase, Panda Ase. And then the Panda Ase, or Koran Pendo, you have to do Yelta. Tunji Chubada, and the Teranashi, Koti, Churti, Labanashi, Chur to Chechuba. Konduchigyo Amari Chambata, Negro said to Zuko, Chechukura, Tunji Chura, Chechuba, Chuba. Tatinashi, Rangea Tinashi Chuba, Chushenge Rangea Tinashi Chuba, Koran Shedelpa, Yamnichi, Nikayo, Chechu, Tapshichegara. Doing what she said in Ba. No. Oh, then it tended to ten, Joe Mambo, doing what she love 10 years or Tenji Chuba years, Cutilla 10 years or and the carrying good as a devil, Pandan Chasor Drawaye, Delaware Church and the Jursa. Oh. Touching but I never know the Pembata Tenji Chuba doing what she love 10 years. And the Chada. Sormose, Cha Sor, Nabeke Butter, Dewaye, and then Cherry Chantua. Chada, the Shabnazune Semo to the Boru Tomba Yora, the Tomba Mavice, Kotabu Tabu, 2 devils, Sara. Yan the Nesi, the Gazer of Taja, Logan to Stark on that road to get. Bed the day Kagama, get Tibor Del David. Chada Shabsur Dave, Delotas, and Del David Kuisera. Then Del David and I Kagachi met the Rema, trouble Koti, Gazer of the Tar in a tie or to do, you said. Oh, did it, Chashab Kolutambas. Go to Tunjutangu, yeah. It was Nambe Gabutas, Namba to the Tinde, you said. Gangba to about Del David Shugua. Or dinner she in a shut in and a lot part of the Kagachi with trouble in the sea because among Beke Buddha, Shamsu Dewachan to Jurassic. Yeah, this is Lana.
So then next in verse 179 or 79 here, then this is referring to the 4 acts of for gathering disciples. So through generosity and gentle speech, by acting beneficently and consistently, you will have hands and feet with digits joined by glorious webs. So here, the kind of 4 means for attracting disciples. First, we gather through generosity, those who might be in need in some way, to bring them in through acts of generosity, and then to speak to them kindly. So here, and gentle speech, referring to speaking to others kindly, and then giving and acting beneficently, as in giving advice that is good, giving them advice that will be of benefit to them. And not only do you tell them, oh, you should do this and you shouldn't do this, but you also yourself act consistent with that. You follow that for yourself. So training for a long time in these 4 means of gathering disciples then leads to, as it describes here, having hands and feet with digits joined by glorious webs. So normally as ordinary sentient beings, we have these kinds of gaps between our fingers, but a Buddha has hands that are sort of hands and feet that have the digits joined by webs. Now we shouldn't think that this would prevent a Buddha from, say, putting on a ring. There's the ability, there is still the sort of space and the flexibility to be able to do that. However, a Buddha's digits are conjoined by that kind of almost like a webbing, like as it describes in the commentary, the king of swans that have, like swans and other types of birds like that will have their hands and feet webbed. And so too, a Buddha has those kinds of webbed hands and feet, not in a sort of obstructive way where they couldn't, say, be adorned, or they can't put on jewelry or something, but these come as a result of practicing through a long time these 4 means of gathering disciples.
Oh, yeah, talk on the coalition. Get you Tambadera. Oh, yeah. You don't got the Sawat on the 2 year choice. That Sayat on 2 years of what Joe Mambolia, in the Chimbatan Sigora. Rabdo Mambo Chimba is such a sober color. 미소를 침바 마부 따와에 소라 rab도 마부 침바에 주텔라 때는 레부 가리온 거르시나 벤데 차다 샵니에시사 아니 사제게 차다 샵데 냠보 라 샵니에시 구치 토와를 주르세 오다 드시데 오데시 용구도 마부시티에서 샹라 사와다 동아 상부 칼라야보다 동해 마부 rab도 마부 침바에 벤데 차다 샵니에시 잠라세 차다 샵도 저바 냠보다 잠보 진데 녀신 잠라 션샤샤와 로충중나시기 그뒤나 진데 션샤샤와다 구체신 차샵지 겹시 차다 샵지 겹시다 착바디 뽕버즈 가상아주 내 똥버에도 와대 똥버르체 겹로티 찍어요 말아 저저 가가 봐 냠봐요 됐어 태공이다 딱배 초 뒤 좀부터야 양시시에 캔배 토아를 주봐서 똥버매거든 뒤도 좀 가서 겹로다 저저 가가 뽕버 겹로도 가가 셰파킹이 냠부터 치우셔라 이제서라 겨주 담바디바 샵다 차라서 원예시 셔셔셔라 아니 샵지 겹시다 샵지 겹도 쓰여라 차다 샵지 겹시셔라 아니 초 태군이 땅마디 뽕버 그때서 이제 뉴데다 겹 때서 간가 셔야케다 초 양바 캥베 다들 어디지람나 된데서 겨주 담바 그래서
No.
yeah.
So then, beginning with verse 180, through abundantly giving the best food and drink, your glorious hands and feet will be soft, and you will have a large body with 7 broadly curved parts. So here, from giving generously to others, food and drink and so forth, the result of that is to sort of have very kind of like large, soft hands and feet. And then the second part of this, where it says that you will have a large body with 7 broadly curved parts. So here, this is referring to having sort of like a broad, large body. And in the kinds of ways that our ordinary body has, like we have like divots, say, near our shoulders here, where it comes in, and so too on our back and so forth. All of those areas are sort of either convex or sort of even. They don't have that kind of concavity that we have in these particular parts of our body. So rather than that, as it describes it here, you will have this large body with 7 broadly curved parts.
Yeah, that 겨주 돼 그래. 다들 가르쳐서나 세면서 차와매버서 샬라 너바매바다 네 셴세에 타치버도 타르버셔바 세다르다 아티소라 세메 세바 타르체베 구제 장시 쳐와다 구순 제바다 장보 아니 첨보 어디서 야 장보 구구라 근데 매버셔 장시 쳐와다 아니 세리 소모 쳐와다 소모 다 차다 또 가가 릭보다 내가 정화다. 그러니까 세반도바 타르체베 어디 데바더라 다들 샹라 차와 매바다 세반도바 타르체베 근데 따나도 베고 꾸제시 제바세다 제바다 요아 매바 장보야 카도 구구다 쪼쪼들베 예와 세와다 세레와다 그러니까 소모레와 어디 샵다 소모 또 바르고 요래 아니 샵지 차치를 파고다 땡바양보다도 샵지 치가 전에 강배 jablo de chikpa de chora, te tsu, toba de chusara. Gangde de tsu, chirpapa tsu, tanda tsu yotabite. Oh, tende tsu sara. Geshe Yeshe rawa, taware, Geshe Yeshe. Oh, digdo.
Mhm.
No, Shab Geshe Thabkhe, the Sormuta to Rawata. And Tingba Yangba Tato Jus. Tingba Hakura, Shab Geshe Yeshe, Titsuto, Suteva Yasara. Oh, yeah.
So then moving on to verse 181. So there were two that came in the last verse, and there will be three that come in this. It says, through renouncing violence and freeing those to be killed, your body will be beautiful, straight, and tall. That's one sort of sign. You will have a long life. Your digits will be long. That's the second. And your heels will be broad, being the third. So here, the kind of results, and again, this comes from practicing for a long time, of renouncing of violence against others and freeing those to be killed, is having a kind of a large, straight body, a beautiful, straight, and a body that is beautiful, straight, and tall. So here, when one renounces violence and sort of spares the lives of those who might be executed, for example, this leads to having a beautiful kind of a body, and one that is not bent over, but is really like upright and straight. And so too, this results in having long digits, long fingers and toes, as well as having then these kinds of, and your heels will be broad. Again, we have this sort of even foot, and the heel is not sort of narrowed at the end, but has a broad kind of a nature to it.
This one. Oh, that's all the Kabbalah. Just can you do it? Oh, yeah. Da Yangda Langbe Chö Namni, Pelwe Pande, Dose, Da Susugi, Chö Kari Keli Chayina, Tombora Chi, Sawa Payala Soba Kari Kelang Yunasigura. Yangda Langbe Chö Namni, Pelwe Se Susu Yamli Che, Mishandala Yapa, Pelwa Sigura. Mishandala Chushe Labja. Susu Yamli Che, Tina Shim Mishandala, Geshe Tony in the Chushe doing the Gadu in a pa. Pelko yara, Mishandal Pengi yara, teacher. Yanda Langbe Chö Namni, Pelwe, Panden Dawson, Kusugun daughter to Sambo, Ra. And then Shabki Longbu Mengutas, Shabji Longbu Menguta, Shabji Longbu to the Kambal Chigrab Toto, and the Uda, Tezungi Omar, Marazuneshi. I joined the Sude Toto of Tende Yongudua, Tende Yoma, Ruben Yoma, Shakpa, Kencha. Shabji Longbu Mengubada, Babu Kendo Shogbe Chamber Juse. Putu Kanga de ya, yes, ya Kitchia, Rere ya, Kendo Choba, yes, ya Choba, Kaya Lo de ya, Jeter. Chogbe Chamber Juse. Or the Yanda Balambe, Debata or the door, Yanda Balambe, Shuji Chiduna, Pelwe, Shandala, Shudi Pelwe. But then those sanctions, those sanctions, Shabji, Lumbu Mengudas, Toto, the Chig Toto, the Tezungi Omare. Pukendo Rene, yes, Kiva. Kui Pusu Pabuto, Rene, Ye Kitchen, Yakendo Yakalone, yes, Kenny Negio, Restaurant, Mandriva Church. When we're somebody, you're hot, Tichulam, Dido, Kishkan.
So then next in verse 182, through enhancing the practices that you have undertaken. And here, really, it's not just enhancing the practices that you have undertaken, but really spreading those to others. So whatever it is that you yourself practice, using that as a kind of inspiration or enhancement, explaining that practice then to others, leads to, as it says here, you will be glorious, you will have a good complexion, your ankles will not not be prominent, and you will be marked with body hairs that curl upward. So here, when it describes the kind of results then that come from enhancing the practices that you have undertaken. So again, this refers to whatever it is that you practice, developing that within yourself, but also using that to benefit others, to give them advice that accords with that, or explaining it to others leads to yourself having a good kind of radiant complexion, as well having ankles that are not prominent. Now here, when we think about our own ankles, our bones kind of stick out on either side. A Buddha's ankles are not like that. They're sort of even and smooth. They don't have those sorts of bony protrusions. And then the body of a Buddha is marked by these hairs that sort of curl upward in a pleasing kind of a fashion. And this again being the result of enhancing one's own practices, both for yourself and using those to benefit others.
Yes, oh yeah, that just something. Rikta sola sobe ne sira, ribene karina ne so ribala soba ribene ngabatuzo se, rangi shembetuzo. Rikta sola sobe ne se ribene ngala sobe stuzo ne. Kube lenshin sosu labdusa kushebda chadizu ne. Ane rangi shembate shenla pa labate sora. Kube lenda chimbe kyo se shenla chimba. Shenla pa shekora, labkora. Chal Pato Yara. Oh, Tenik Tin Jabutilla Kari Ungurasne Cutie. Ina Yae Chimbada. Ye no Shirab Chimbuja. Juda Ina Yana say, Jimbayora. Jimba to the Kangape, Koyamburache. But Ram Ji Paburache, Yawisara, Jimbataza. Oh, Tina she Yores, a Queen Jimbatas. Jimbata. Ye no unassembly one number. Shirab Shimbu, Shirab Tarshimbu, Tende Gurati, Kuteletani Yogure Suda. Or Shene, Ribenangala Sobatezo, Soribala Soba, Rangi Labetus, Kubeda Chete, Lavieta, Kushab da Chet. The Rangi Shimba de Shalapa, Shaya, Chimbe, and it Chimbati, Rita Inayandana, Shirim Gia, Pabo Shaya Rimjidra, Zeboyora. Shulwe. Rida Inayandata, Temba Sawa, Tembo Chembuta, Shirab Noala Soba, or Tendel Jokade, just Kasum Tida, yeah, this one.
No, jeez. So then coming in 183, by both learning and imparting with respect the sciences, crafts, and other fields of knowledge, you will have the calves of an antelope and have a sharp mind and great wisdom. So here, the sort of physical sign is those calves of an antelope. So by having knowledge of the various kinds of arts, sciences, crafts, and so forth, and developing that such that you're able to teach to others in a respectful kind of a way, this leads to the physical kind of sign of having the calves of an antelope. I guess they're considered to be sort of quite beautiful, the way that these their calves are formed. And this again comes by ourselves having knowledge of these various sciences and using that knowledge to impart it to others. And then this in turn leads to our own having a kind of good memory, a sharp wisdom, and developing a great sort of investigative, analytical kind of a wisdom. Although, of course, those are not the physical signs of a Buddha.
Oh, yeah, that you kept Shidimba. Oh, yeah, Cha. This one. Cha got that on Jigdanke. Number them all Chitata, ordered.
Rangi Nordo
Rangi Nordo, Langjuna, Soso, Chuchala Soba, Shandalia, Pendo, Shetu Shangi Langba ina, Pe Yabushi Tangdesa, Nurto Tang, tissue case. Or Tingal Kugi said, Robert was no Namsan, Joban Namsada, young Mari Chitime, Namsabatan, Nurto Tang, said. Rangin Norio, but the shell question, Jopa Kashi Toshiton the Patawati Mamuche Balatene, Chutele tene chen sambu kari tukure sinansigora. Rangi nor dos, rala yebe nor tesigora. Lang jurna mishenda lang jurna. Nyurtu tawe tushuki, nyurtu tawe cholam ki sigora. Cholam pe akashi toshidane namsa taene. Cha kya, cha kya teta. Jikdenje, namban rembanji tu jursa. O rangin dope shen, shala nyurtu tawale tam chebne. Kele shen namsa kele chebate. Ni cha geshe se. Cha tuzu pa kebo, rwa. Shenpo tinde yoy. Rinwa da cha rinpo ma. Ngaranzo le tosi ringa tishira. Kuyin do dewa da, kuyin do tuzu sambo. Nen jikden, namban rembanji, jikden jin remba. Jikden jin tamba chenpo li kyore re sebere. O tindigra,
Hmm.
kyapshi dirida, ya.
No. So then in verse 184, through the avowed practice of quickly giving your wealth at the request of others, your arms will be broad and facile, and you will be a leader of the world. So here, when someone is in need, if you have this practice of immediately giving whatever it is that they need without any sort of hesitation to gladly, joyfully fulfill the needs of others, whatever it is that one might have, if it is necessary for others to quickly give that without any kind of hesitation, leads to then the result of having these sorts of like broad kind of facile arms, sort of able to work, you sort of use them well. And they're also, I should say, in good proportion. So when it comes to the kind of proportion of the body of a Buddha, the arms, the sort of length that they go to and so forth is very pleasing. So this then, the avowed practice of quickly giving your wealth at the request of others, this leads to your arms being broad and facile, and you will be a leader of the world.
Oh yeah, this one. I thought you can't get back Sholuka. Or Nishi Penju, Shawata Yandan Dumber Shabayas. Nishi Rangi Yenjet in the Gora, Rangi Yenjet Pinjata in the Paso. And it's Timati Yungura, to some Martin and Hazan Martin Jashashavra, Korakarchin, usual Slav Machasura. Make it on Dumber Chen, teach on the Yagra, Contentini, Javasavira. Oh, teach Nishi Penju. 제와 따서 가가지는 미팅 버차서나 양당 넘버를 잡아야지 근데 넘줘야 돼. 아주 남주 타마빵고래서 타마빵에 될 가지고래 남주는 넘버를 가와서 그뒤에 드라마들은 주주에 탑시신 게 시고요라. 완전히 개발해서 그 콘트 가르치는 시스템 쭉쭉 시스템이라 근데 멤버십. 이제 편주 제와 따서 가가지는 미팅 버차나 양당 넘버를 잡아야지 춘 domdi tenchu batela sera. Pandan domje bawane, popsu nube choto churuse, tambar churuse, oti karsura. Nyenshi penjun chawata yanda bar dumba chawata sera, chawa mara yawa, kaga shere. Chawata dumbar cheba ye langbo sheda, tachang sheda, langjin de tachang shetu zu domge tachi ungora, susu poda mota ungora, oti ba Bosun no day is it, so turn day is Samara, Shanalolia to no day other, Tongyo. Pandan don't get Babune, Bosun no be Tambaricurus, oh, teach you Lamna, Kajukanga Dada.
So then verse 185 reads, through seeing to the reconciliation of friends who have had a falling out, you will be a holy person with secret organ retracted into the abdomen. So here, when it comes to like our friends, our family, those who we are familiar with having some kind of disagreement, oftentimes like our response might be to be like, oh, you know what, they disagree, okay, just let it go. And we like try to forget about it, or we just don't pay attention to it. But through seeing to the reconciliation of friends who have had a falling out, if we make an active effort at reconciling people who have had such a falling out, this is the result that comes from that is having this secret organ that is retracted into the abdomen. So here we talk about needing to give up divisive speech, saying things that create divisions between others, but really we also need to make an effort at reconciliation, at bringing people together when they have some kind of disagreements. And so the result that comes from that is like certain animals, like for example, an elephant and a horse and so forth, their male sign, particularly not the female, this isn't applicable, but the male sign is something that can be retracted into the body. So it's not visible at all times. And so too, for a Buddha, they have that kind of mark or that kind of sign as well.
Oh, did it. Oh, yeah, that did it. Kangsan Tani, Diwata, Suda, Kangba Sambo, Tessa Kangba Jayada. And then Diwata Nesha, Tanda, Tindripa, Peshuche, Kangapa, Sambut and Shendal, Chimbata, Suda. Kangsan Tani, Diwata, say, Tinya, said that in the tender, sir. This is somewhat Chimba is Devuta, Ra, Sambo. Oh, yeah, Wota, Tinu, to look Devu, Tindripa. Sambutin Mambo, Joe Mambo Chimbata, Tegis, ora. And they current Dogudas and Sasa, Tutelacane, Sene Soma, Trimeba, Serjan Somata, Ser Soma, Ser, Daughter Yaputa, Jambuta Tindeke Chichusara, Sene Soma, Trimema, Timameba, Jameba, Shindu Jamben Donda, Yosa, Queen Daughter, Ser Soma, Tomen Donda, Sigda, or Tindeke.
So the next in verse 186, it reads, by giving pleasant and excellent dwellings adorned with carpets, your skin will have a gentle hue like unrefined, untarnished gold. So here, by making a kind of a gift of, for example, pleasant and excellent dwellings that are adorned with carpets and so forth, things that are pleasing to others, by giving them such pleasant dwellings, it leads to the result of one's own skin having, and again, this kind of activity through many lifetimes leads to the result of having a very sort of like soft, gentle kind of a hue of the skin, like unrefined, untarnished gold. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, talk about this. What just kept doing, ba? Lana maybe one Jinshin say. Rang Gabola Soba, one just Chambuchadu, Ranga one jadi Abu Pechuche, and the one jadi Shandal Pa Chimbatade. Shandal Terre, the Tata Chora, Chimbatan Shora. Lana maybe one day, Sosa Pechuche, me Shandal Pa, Gabu Series, Shandal Ter Soso, Shasha Tindora. Lana maybe one day Shanla Chinshin, Ranga Chen, Shanla Chinshin, River, Lame Rejo Pasa. Oh, River, Lama Sobatezo Somba Nashi, Jubate, Joma Jubaltane, Pandan Punya Reda, Shane Zubi, Jambar Jose, Pandan Sanje Kitine, Kui Pabu Rerenes, Kui Pabu Yagas, Pabu Rerene, Ta, and then Zubu, Shan the Tibaru, Zubi, Jambata Dugu Resiora. Oh, don't say, Jesse La Soba. Lana maybe one the Shandala Chinshin said, River Lame Kashindo, or Jason Jube, Pande Pavu Kumbu Redene, Nila Soba Major, Pu Nya Redene, Namage to be Chamber Juros, or Terisha, or Tondater. Did us,
Yes.
Ranjubu Hakura, Shani Paru.
So then coming in verse 187, through giving unexcelled authority and properly following your guru, your resplendent body hairs will grow one by one, or sort of one per pore, I should say, and your face will be adorned with the forehead curl. So here, through giving unexcelled authority, also through using your own authority well, and also giving that authority to others who use it well, this lead as well as properly following one's guru's instructions. These then lead to the result of having again, it says here, your resplendent body hairs will grow one by one. And this really means that in each pore, there's only individually one single hair. So this is a characteristic of the Buddha's body. And so too, your face will be adorned with the forehead curl. Now this is sometimes difficult to translate into English, but this sort of right curling sort of miraculous hair that is between the eyes. This is the result of that, of those causes of giving unexcelled authority and properly following your guru.
Oh yeah, that's all got Geshe Thabkhe ba. Oh, you better. Yes, cover me about us. Shenji now and don't get Yambu and get Chula so we'll left it in the Yambu Mada. Pajo the same cover you at and make you and give you a cover me about her. Like what may be, down that timber. You to me about down that timber, like what may be, Pajo Pendo you get like what may be. Down timber share or the Pajo concert the timber. Timber share, Joe Mambo to the share. Chutelatene, and a carrying Gurusina, Chune Pungun Dumbatas, Pumben goes in the Gotes Dumbu, Jabu Sera, Pumbun Dingot. Dumbata Rodu Sangan, Rodu to the Kachambo, Sangi to the Nashapa Pumba Kachambo in this Sangadal, you say. Tebe to so Yanshi, Sambe to so Kawada, the Tebe to so. Nyambo yange pe amjo roke che sambe to similar kawakewa ta shanje legbar me ba da tuber che bes shanje legbar me ba lekshen do chunda tinna shi susu la len tarbe chone pungun dumba da rodo geshe pega chwas pa kachimbo che ku to to chimbo ta kachimbo singina shin se Oh, she was singing and drawer Jura house. Yeah, teacher.
And then in verse 188, it says, by listening properly,
Yeah,
speaking in a pleasant manner, and acting in accord with the well-spoken, your shoulders will be well-rounded, and you will have a leonine upper body. So here, when listening to the words of others, we should do so in a sort of pleasant way or proper kind of a way. So too, when we speak to others, we should speak to them, whether it's giving a dharma advice or otherwise, in a way that is pleasing to them, that isn't sort of aggressive or harsh. And then we should act ourselves in accordance with that advice that is good, or that which is well spoken. So this acting in such ways then results in having these kinds of well-rounded shoulders. Again, these are characteristics that are considered to be beautiful for the body, and having the kind of upper body that's sort of like a lion, a kind of broad, wide upper body.
Oh, yeah, that's a good. Oh, Tenica, never numla, Jimdu dance, never numlia, Robert Church. Service and never search you in the trash unit. Taguti, Jutelatene, Tit Joe Mambo Sabalatene, Tagon Gabatas, Bumba Tagon Gabata. Tangi Nedo, never does. Tangi Kadina Nelma, never does. Troy in a short juice, Rode Sigara. Rosh Mishimba that to them have a Kaduna Rosh out of yours. You do never number rimdut on Neo so much the service and other search on Pungu Penzu, Pumbengo Penzu, and a parashat yeshes. Oh, the need trade to meba Tembers, Tanya to never la match be. Imagine be said to a choto Jurvatas, or Tinde Deputy Yongudesi Vara. Tilitida just say with Anima Tell a Romission Barucho Nasera, Tavakas, and tell a Romission Barucha. Baruch Mugiri Chuja, Sanja Chumde to Tal Tag chat in the Shiva Chuisera. Niku go Sambachuna, all that Sanja and Kevu Pucha, Tatanda de send the Shiva Chuna Pekabusi, Sambachona Chesera. Tene Sanja Shene Hashete, Jindruchik for Tete, Chikte, Tisa, so Tisa. But the Russian Bush was Nimakasha Kala Samuga to the Judy. Sako Garazo Pata to the Togu de Direte Amar. Chidanganzo Tebachembuchan de Hakoda. Sanje Chumden de Co Lungungo San Kesara. Tanda de Sansan Shade, so Lungulicha and Tubulish Yuara. Lungungo San Kesana and Zambulia Tubaches Peguara. Sapata de Chidan me, Dabura Church Peguar Mata Tandako Sanje de Tora. Tayan de take one member to the Sanje Tuberesana. And then me mares and Jadura something less in the Kawachim Mudoa. The Truba in a me each over, me Truba me each over. Just I call me Susu Chambera. San Jet, the Tambu the Sanchez, a tiny me Jiden Tana Shilia, Cochida Nashidachia, Kale Captain, and I think Arazu in the Chaku with the Darachia Mother. San Jayevera. The Ina Pata did in the Jide come to the Simja Mamuchel troops and doing it, the Sunyam the pen the party shed colleague never is said to Consapendo Yara. Leg never must any pay pen was a Tontongumara and Jetu Yamara. Ya Tatishem, what are the teaching Lamaya? Teach your good days.
Oh.
You're
So then in verse 189, it says, through serving and healing the sick, you will have a broad back, you will be imperturbable, and all tastes will be supreme. So here again, over the course of many lifetimes, through serving the sick, helping them, aiding them, and so forth, this leads then to the result of having a very broad back. Again, these are characteristics of the body that are seen as being particularly beautiful, and so too be imperturbable, like unfazed in the face of whatever might come, and so too all tastes will be supreme. So it's said that whatever a Buddha tastes, indulges in, is actually a kind of supreme taste. And there is a story about once when there was a famine and they, had to eat whatever basically was left, including like the fodder for the animals. And Shariputra was very upset about this, thinking like, I can't believe that the Buddha is having to eat this and so forth. But when the Buddha gave him one of the grains or whatever it was that he was eating, he had the most exquisite kind of flavors fill his mouth. The Buddha's taste is not like our own. It's something that is quite distinct. And so here we should also just be aware, again, according to the Mahayana context, the Buddha attained enlightenment, attained the Sambhogakaya, and later came as a supreme emanation body in order to demonstrate the kind of stages of attaining enlightenment. Now, according to the Hinayana, like saying that the Buddha is just an emanation, isn't an actual human being, has its own problems, and they kind of reject that. They would say otherwise. But for those of the Mahayana, they would say that a Buddha attains a Sambhogakaya, complete with all of these various marks and signs, and comes into the world as sort of appearing as an ordinary being in accordance with the kinds of needs of sentient beings. So when it comes to, like, if we don't have the proper karma, we can't even encounter that emanation body of the Buddha, but we certainly can't see the kind of marks and signs that are on that body due to our own sort of obscuration. However, these are something that if you had the proper kind of karma, or if you had removed certain obscurations, you would be able to encounter these kinds of qualities of a Buddha's body, we could say.
Oh, yeah. 다 되래서 다 거래 구치탄 받더라 다 최단 템베 자와라 시도 최단 템베 자와라 토자 최지 우주도스 최단 템베 자와라야 아니 동마매반에 마부지 곰대요 왔다 최지 대송다 텔레테네 아니 우르 죽도던 데마다 레네 나토다다 버스 그와 신 나토다다르스 추신가바 다도 주스 신 나토다 세치도 왔지 바 아주 남주 충중 주담나 전부께 빼래 자기도 나토다 세티레도 야체 롱차스는 야체 되다 파체니 찍어 용도 자갈 마부 용도 신데 야 가제 거네 도네 티나시 체드니 파라 캡기와라 이티올 미테서 되는데 우라 군에 응도잖아 군에 나주다들 출신갑수기도 군에 나주다들 출신갑 돈다 파 산제가 돈파데서 나야 되다 야마가 체니 찍어용 거라 야마한테다 파 놈들이 체 찍어요 자 출신갑아서 되시오라 어디가 최다 템베 자와라 토다 최지 우측도던 데마다 레네 나주다다부 출신갑아니 던져시 추다신 야마다 파쪽에 구수 차장나 시주 집어쳐버렸어 템베 자와라 토다시 소시베 최지 우측도를 내봐라 내봐다 신나주다다 돔다 예매 도바스도 되시거다 lakpa dinreshe domba so hakura yemedo nyamba chushin kabata bos ta wa de kishilana kuju tambate ba sholoka
So then 190 reads, by focusing on deeds that accord with Dharma, you will have a crown protuberance and an ushnisha on your head, and your body will also have the symmetry of a banyan tree. So here, again, this is by practicing for a long time, by focusing on deeds that accord with Dharma, this leads to then the development of that resulting crown protuberance, the Ushnisha, on the head. And so too, this leads to the body having a certain kind of symmetry here. So when it comes to this Nyagroda tree, or the here translated as banyan tree, this is something where when you, you see this more commonly in India, where they will plant these trees and they provide good shade for like, houses and such. But generally speaking, the height and the width of those trees are equal. So they have a nice kind of symmetry to them. So too, the body of a Buddha has that same kind of symmetry in terms of the arm span, and the height is similar to the kind of symmetry that one finds in a banyan tree, for example, wherein the growth upward is sort of matched by the growth outward. So it has this nice level of symmetry. Gupchukochi. Tigni denla jambo da. Lare.
Oh yeah. That is. That's to this that just last
So we have this issue with touching the wrong thing and then losing the spot where we're at, right? But we are going to stop here as we are out of time, but we will pick up with verse 91 or 191, which is then having spoken truthful and gentle words for a long period of time.
Oh yeah, that is, yeah.
So thank you all.
Thank you, Genla, and thank you for these beautiful teachings, and thank you, Katrina, for your translation. We'll finish with some dedications and hope to see everyone again next week, 8 a.m. May the spiritual teachers lead on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray.
May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Junja Jema Jeong Genna.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, welcome. Well, that's all.
Recording stop.